Yeah.
Hello, everyone. Looks like people are being added in, so welcome everyone. We'll make a start in just a moment. We'll just give people a chance to join in case they're running a minute or two late. Please do be aware that this is being recorded right from the start of this webinar, so it's already recording now. Your microphones and cameras are turned off by default, just so that information isn't captured from those, but of course the recording may just capture parts of names, so just please do be aware of that. However, you are very free to obviously type in the chat and ask any questions as we go through, so please do feel free. My colleague Anna Rita is on the call as well. She'll be keeping an eye out on the chat, and I will be trying to keep one eye on the chat as I'm presenting the webinar as well. But you've got just a moment or two to grab a drink before we get started. Okay, I can't see anyone new being added in the last minute or so. So I think what we'll do is we'll make a start. And of course, any latecomers are very welcome to join us. So just a quick reminder, in case anyone didn't hear it at the start, this webinar is being recorded for others to be able to watch. So please do be aware of that. Your microphones and cameras are turned off by default, so no data will be captured from that. But of course, there is the potential for the recording to capture your names on screen as well. So do just keep that in mind. Very, very welcome to ask any questions and comment throughout. So please do. We want this to be a bit more of an interactive session and a chance for you to share things. So please do type things into the chat. And my colleague Anna Rita, who's also on the call, will be on the lookout for those. I will keep one eye open as I'm presenting as well and try and pick up any questions as we go. Otherwise, we will have some time for questions at the end as well. So welcome to this webinar, one of our webinars that we're running as part of the Better Internet for Kids programme. My name is Gareth Cort. I am part of the digital citizenship team along with Anna Rita at European Schoolnet, and we run the Better Internet for Kids portal. And delighted to be talking to you today about a very important topic. It's been very important for years, if I'm honest, but very topical this year, particularly for so many countries around the world, not just in the EU, having national elections or even just local elections. This whole idea of disinformation and fake news and how that can impact on all of us online, be you child, young person, or adult. So we're going to be exploring this topic. We're going to start by thinking more widely around issues around information. Then I'm going to pivot over to fake news, and then we're going to kind of come back to disinformation to kind of fill in the gaps and wrap things up together there. There is an interactive part of this presentation. There is a little quiz that will be coming up later, and I will give you instructions on how to take part on that quiz. You can take part on the device on which you're joining, or ideally, if you've got, say, like a smartphone to hand to be able to use, that's quite an easy way to join as well. But I will explain all when we get there. However, before we dive into all of that, just a couple of things to cover before we get into the main topics. The first is just a reminder about our Better Internet for Kids Teacher Corner, which sits on the Better Internet for Kids platform. If you haven't explored it yet, it's well worth a look. It's our one-stop shop for learning about digital citizenship and different aspects of online safety. It provides a wealth of advice and information for you as an educator about how to teach about online safety, how to understand the main risks that your learners may face online, and also signpost to lots of useful resources and materials and other things that can help you with your teaching and your interactions with children and young people. And it's made up of a number of different learning modules. There are 4 core modules that you can work through. And unlike some of the other courses that we offer at European Schoolnet, particularly if you're familiar with our European Schoolnet Academy platform and our MOOCs, massive open online courses that we run there, on the BIK Teacher Corner, all of these materials are completely free to access. You don't need to sign up, but they are self-directed, so you just work through them at your own pace. They don't have many complicated activities or assignments or things that you have to do. They're just there for information for you to be able to work through as and when you need them. So there are 4 core introductory modules that we recommend that everyone works their way through on the BIK Teacher Corner before moving forward. And they are, as you can see on here, they are exploring things such as children's rights in the digital world, the broad range of key risks that different children and young people can face at different ages online and through technology, different strategies for teaching about not just online safety, but media literacy, which is very much the focus of this webinar, and digital citizenship as well, and also the importance of considering how you can work with your colleagues and with your school leadership to adopt and formalize a whole school approach to education in this area with best practice in mind, not just in terms of education, but in terms of child protection as well. So lots of useful information in those 4 key modules. And then, in addition to all of those, we have all of these wonderful deep dive modules that go into specific topics. You see more pictured on the screen here. I won't read them all out, but we are adding to these more or less on a monthly basis. So the list is growing all of the time. There is already one on there about mis and disinformation. And some of the information that I'm presenting on the webinar today is taken from that deep dive. But you can see there are other topics such as sexting. There's ones more recently around generative AI and algorithms, around deepfakes, around NFTs and cryptocurrencies, which might be an area that maybe you don't know so much about. And again, you can access these in any order. You can dip in and out depending on the topics that you are really interested in to help strengthen your knowledge and signpost you to useful teaching resources to help you educate children and young people on this as well. So please do go and check out the BIK Teacher Corner hopefully straight after this webinar. Yeah, as I said, it's being added to on a regular basis. So this deep dive module list will continue to increase. Just get back to my slides. There we go. And because the nature of this webinar is very much rooted in media literacy and media literacy skills, this is a perfect opportunity just to signpost you to our upcoming MOOC, Massive Open Online Course, that will be starting next Monday, the 6th of May. It's completely free to join. You just need to create a European Schoolnet Academy account, and then you can join any of the courses that are available on the platform. This one runs from the 6th of May to the 12th of June. And it is part of our Media Literacy Case for Educators project, which involves us as European Schoolnet, alongside partners Tactical Tech, Save the Children Italia, and IFLA, the International Federation for Library Associations and Institutions. So together we're working on the Media Literacy Case for Educators, or MLCE project. Our wonderful partners at Tactical Tech have developed a wonderful exhibition of media literacy resources for young people called Everywhere All the Time, and that is available to download and access for free. Links for that are in the MOOC. And the MOOC itself is going to explore the nature of that exhibition and the topics around media literacy that are covered within that. And although we are focusing today on disinformation and fake news, which are crucial things to consider in media literacy, this project actually explores other aspects of media literacy that maybe you haven't considered in quite so much detail. So some of the topics are going to be about understanding the nature of large language models, the things that underpin a lot of the generative AI that we use today, understanding the nature of algorithms and its impact on people's experiences online, understanding things like persuasive design in gaming, understanding the impact of technology on our health and our well-being, but also the ethical and moral considerations around using the internet and technology. So the material cost of the internet, what is the impact on the environment of running data servers 24/7 or having high-speed broadband or satellites covering the entire atmosphere of the globe? What are the costs related to human labor and the people that work to provide this day in, day out infrastructure of the technology that we use in our daily lives? So some really interesting topics there you can explore. As I mentioned, starts next Monday. You can join the course at any time outside of the live period, but you can only receive certification at the end of the course by completing all the units and the final course assignment and submitting that by the 12th of June. So if you're interested in signing up, the link is on the bottom of the slides here, and we will be making these slides available alongside the recording of this for you to easily get to that link. So Let's turn our attention then onto the topic of this webinar, disinformation and fake news. And as I mentioned, we're going to start more broadly, then we're going to head over to fake news for a little bit, and then pivot back to disinformation to fill in some of the blanks. And I think the important place to start actually is to take a step back from these two particular terms of disinformation and fake news and think more widely about issues around information, both online and offline. And we tend to refer to this as information disorder, of which underneath sit three main types. The first is one that you've probably already heard of, misinformation. So when inaccurate information or things that are lacking in detail are shared online, but aren't done in a way that's intended to cause harm. People simply make mistakes. They share data that hasn't been verified, or they say it's one thing when it isn't something else because they've got confused or they've misunderstood. There is no malicious intent. There's no intent to harm or to disrupt. That's misinformation. On the other hand, disinformation is very much the opposite. It's when false information is shared, but knowingly in order to cause harm. It's done with a particular agenda or motive in mind. And we'll be looking at some of those motives in a little while. And then there is a third main type, one that we don't sort of hear about too much in this area, unless you're really steeped in media literacy education. But it is this idea of malinformation, when actually accurate, genuine information that's designed to remain private is shared in the public sphere and deliberately done so in order to try and cause harm to an individual or a group or an official body, such as a government or another organization. So a little bit more nuanced, that one, the idea of actually weaponizing accurate information as opposed to weaponizing inaccurate or fake or false information. So it's useful to keep these terms in mind. And fake news, which we're going to come to in a moment, very much sits under disinformation. It's very typically false information that is shared with a particular purpose or agenda in mind. And that's where we turn our attention to fake news. Now, before we get into some more details about fake news, I feel like it's only right that I have to play a certain type of video clip of how the term fake news is very often used in the modern world today. Apologies, you probably see this person too much in the news and on your feeds already, but I think it is important to acknowledge the way in which this term is used by one particular individual in the world.
Fake news.
Fake news.
You are fake news. We are not going to let the fake news tell us what to do.
Very fake news. You're dishonest people.
The dishonest media.
Your organization is
The fake media. CNN's fake news. I don't take questions. I don't take questions from CNN.
That was just fake news by NBC, which gives a lot of fake news. It's frankly disgusting the way the press is able to write whatever they want to write.
Keep going. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, everybody. Let's go. Come on, guys. Thank you very much.
Why has Vladimir Putin not accepted your invitation, Mr. President?
So apologies for having to see Trump for at least a couple of minutes there, but I think it is an important thing to acknowledge because immediately when we start talking about fake news, we run into a bit of a problem. And you might have picked up on that by watching that video clip, is that, of course, people use the term in different ways. And Donald Trump has very much used it in the past and still to the present day to discredit legitimate journalism, to pass it off as being fake news headlines designed to make money for news corporations, when actually what those corporations are often doing is reporting events that are happening around the world and indeed in the US, and trying to report those fairly and objectively, and are being tarred with this idea of everything being fake or having an agenda behind it. And I think that's really important because that video is actually taken from about 6 years ago. So during the last time that Donald Trump was president, and indeed, if some people are predicting correctly that it may well be he gets a second term in the US election later this year, then of course this rhetoric may continue, and you may hear this term being used again more widely to discredit what is actually a fairly accurate journalism trying to describe events. So that is one key problem with fake news. And Donald Trump likes to claim that he coined this term. He didn't actually coin it. I'm not entirely sure who did, but it definitely wasn't him. But it is important to recognize that depending on where you go looking, there are different definitions for this term around there. So I've picked this one in particular. This is from the Oxford English Dictionary and coined in 2019, where they termed fake news as being news that conveys or incorporates false, fabricated, or deliberately misleading information, or that is characterized as or accused of doing so. And I quite like this definition because a lot of other definitions of fake news would very much talk about it being, false or fabricated or misleading information, trying to pass it off as real news. But this one actually includes that aspect that Donald Trump has kind of been using of this, of the fact that people may accuse others of being fake news as a way of, if you like, weaponizing the term when they are in fact legitimate, accurate sources of information. And I think it's important to kind of establish the differences between that. Depending on who you ask, people might use the term fake news in different ways. What we're often talking about more broadly with fake news is forms of disinformation, but indeed some people may use it to discredit actual legitimate forms of information as well. So it's important to keep that in mind. Now, before we get on to a bit of fun with fake news, another interesting thing, and I love this, I remember this when it came out about 7 years ago, but it still fascinates me, is that fake news was named Collins Dictionary's official word of the year for 2017. Collins Dictionary is a dictionary we have here in the UK, where I'm based. And fake news was the official word of the year, which I find fascinating because it's 2 words. Although if you look at the other runners, the other contenders for word of the year in 2017, fidget spinner was in there, which I think might be 2 words as well. There are a few other ones in there. I can't remember what they were, but there are quite a few 2-word words. So the dictionary's idea of what a single word is a fascinating thing, because fake news apparently is a word of the year, despite being 2. But also really interestingly is the year directly after, so the word of the year for 2018, they actually picked misinformation. So there was definitely a theme around that time, particularly during Trump's first stint as president, where this information was kind of, this whole idea of information disorder and misinformation and disinformation was very much in the public eye and in the public mind. And I feel that's still very much the case today as well. As I mentioned at the start, there are a lot of elections happening around the world, taking place over the course of this year. And of course, the threat to the security and the robustness and the fairness of those elections is under threat from things such as misinformation, disinformation, and indeed fake news as well. And we'll come into that in a bit more detail in a moment. But I thought it's high time to involve you, because you've heard me speak for a while. Let's get you involved in doing something too. We're going to have a little go at a fake news quiz. I've got 10 headlines lined up for you. Some of them are real news headlines. Some of them are fake news headlines. And I'd love you to have a go at trying to work out which is which. So if you could, either on the device that you're using to access this call or using another device that you might have to hand, such as a mobile phone or a tablet, if you could head over to www.menti.com, or you can scan the QR code on the screen with your smartphone if you've got that handy. And then when you get through on your web browser, you need to enter the code 72695279, and that will queue you up as a player ready for the quiz. While you're doing that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Don't worry, because I'm immediately going to share the quiz screen, which will have all of these details on there as well, including the QR code. So if you don't catch these details before I stop sharing, don't worry, they'll be coming back in a moment. We'll wait for everyone to get ready, and then we'll have a go at doing our fake news quiz. So bear with me just 1 second. There it is. Fantastic. So don't worry if you didn't catch the details. They should now be back on your screen. The code is at the top. And I can see you all jumping in. So you've all got your own little icon, and you can choose a name of your choice as well. You can either use the default one that it provides, which is just a random name, or you can choose your own name as you see fit. So we'll just give people a moment to join, and then we'll have a go at our quiz. And thank you, Anna Rita, for sharing the code and the details in the chat as well. Very helpful. Okay, so I can see we've got 26 people attending on the call live at the moment. We've only got 10 players, so I'll just give you a few more moments in case you'd like to join the quiz. You don't have to join, of course, but it is good fun to join. And then before we start, I'll just explain the rules. I'm very much enjoying the selection of icons as well. I know you didn't get to choose those. I think most of those are picked by random, but we've got a nice festive assortment there of an Easter bunny, and we did have a snowflake, and we've got a Santa emoji, and a crab, and a soccer ball. We've got a real mixture there. I feel like I should have added some kind of elevator music just to kind of sit here while we're kind of waiting for people to join. Okay. I was about to start, and then someone else jumped in. A paperclip jumped in. So I'll just give you one more moment, and then we'll have a go at our quiz. Okay, can't see anyone else joining at the moment. So there are 10 questions, as you can see on the screen. We'll do each one in turn, and as it appears, it will appear on your device that you're accessing Menti, and you'll be asked to select whether or not the headline is true or fake. You will be given 10 seconds in order to input your answer. The faster you input your answer, the more points you get. And provided that I've set this up correctly, at the end of the quiz, we should get a leaderboard that shows the final scores. So fastest finger wins on this as well. Okay, right. In the interest of time, we're going to dive on in then. So get ready. Here is the first question, the first fake news headline. I'll read them out for you as well.
Hey, Gareth, I think you're muted.
Sorry, people,
No
you can't hear
problem.
anything I'm saying. It's okay. You get the idea of the quiz, though. Congratulations, well done. That is a true headline. I'm so sorry. I was so engrossed in the quiz, I completely forgot that I was muted. So in case any of the details that I provided were missed, fastest finger works best on this. The quicker you answer, the more points you get, and there is a leaderboard at the end that will show the top scores. And there are 10 questions in total, and I'll read out the rest of them so you can hear them too. Okay, here we go. Question number 3. Swedes invent antifreeze for humans. It is indeed a fake news headline. Well done. Moving on to number 4. I think we're all ready. Off we go. Australia is moving further north every year. Ooh, a bit more of an even split there. It is in fact true. So it's actually shifting millimeters a year, or fractions of millimeters a year, but it's actually moving to the point where it's throwing sat navs and GPS out of alignment because the whole continent is actually moving. Well done if you got that one right. Moving on to number 5. Just make sure everyone is ready. I think so. Okay, question number 5. The world's first underwater golf course has opened. Ooh, an even split on that one. Indeed, that one is fake. I'm not entirely sure how the golf balls would move underwater. I think there is an underwater roller coaster being developed there. I don't think it's open yet. Okay, moving on to number 6. Humboldt penguin breaks into family home in Peru. Yeah, well done. That one is indeed completely correct, and probably gave the family a bit of a scare at the same time. Moving on to number 7. Robot becomes principal of high school in Japan. Ah, they are. That's quite a cynical answer, actually. Your jobs are still safe as educators. Don't worry, you're not being replaced by robots just yet, and hopefully not for a long, long time to come, or indeed ever. But no, there is no robot as a principal of a school in Japan. Moving on to question 8, or headline number 8. Off we go. Man tries to trade kidnapped baby for 15 Big Macs at Arkansas McDonald's in the USA. Gosh, another even split there. It does sound like the kind of thing that could happen in the United States, but in fact, that is a fake news headline. Well done if you got that one. Moving on to number 9. We've lost one of our players, so I'm just giving them a few seconds. There they are. Fantastic. Number 9. Off we go. Grandmother left dangling 7 feet upside down after getting stuck in shop's shutters. Well done. That is in fact true. That's actually a story from here in the UK of a grandmother who got caught in the shutters when they kind of opened up to open up the front of the store. She got caught up in them and actually raised up. There's a viral video clip going around YouTube and other social media in recent months. Well done if you got that one. And on to the final headline to make a decision on. Off we go. Bruno Mars allegedly owes $50 million in gambling debt. And well done, that is indeed fake. Hopefully he owes nothing in gambling debt. I don't know if there's an actual figure other than 50 million, but it's definitely not 50 million. Well done. Thanks so much for taking part. Let's see who our winner was. It was Magical Rhino. So congratulations, Magical Rhino, whoever you are. Oh no, it's still going. Yeah, there we go. Magical Rhino, congratulations with 7,745 points. Well done, congratulations. Thank you very much, everyone, for playing. Just bear with me a moment while I stop sharing that and get back to our presentation. Super. So hopefully you can see the presentation slides again. Thanks for taking part of that. Thanks for indulging me. It's always fun sometimes just to have a look at some weird and wonderful headlines. And that sometimes is a really nice way into talking about this area, particularly with children and young people of all different ages. It's often quite light-hearted strategy as well. So it doesn't have to be too sort of doom and gloom or too scary, but starts to get them thinking a little bit about how sometimes it's hard to make judgments about what is real or fake online, particularly if you're just reading a headline out of context and you need to make a decision. And as some of you found by taking part in that quiz, it's not the easiest thing to do to make choices on that one. It's quite easy to sometimes believe that something is real when it isn't, or sometimes discount a real headline because it sounds too extreme. The world is a weird and wonderful place, and we do often hear about all those weird and wonderful things thanks to the internet now and increased journalism and reporting. So it's really important. Obviously, it's nice to talk about fake headlines and have a bit of a giggle at these weird and wonderful things, be they real or fake. But it's important to look more seriously at the motives behind why people are creating this fake news content and putting it out there for others to see and spread. And there are a number of different motives here. This probably doesn't cover the full range of them, but here are some of the main ones behind this type of behavior online. The first, and probably most prominent, and indeed very important for this election year, is this whole idea of political agendas. The fact that fake news headlines and other disinformation may be pushed out there as some form of propaganda to try and influence people's views and opinions, to try and sort of change the narrative around certain things that are happening, both at a local, a national and international level. There's also the fact that there's money to be made in this one. So I'm sure you've seen it on news websites that you may have visited in the past before, where you've got those clickbaity headlines, those really extreme headlines, sometimes written with a lot of capital letters for many of the words, saying things such as, you'll never believe what this celebrity looks like 20 years on, or 10 amazing things you didn't know about so-and-so. And you click through the article, and it turns out to be far less dramatic and interesting than you first thought. In fact, sometimes the headline or the article tagline bears no relation to the thing that you're actually reading. So there is an element of fake news around that approach as well. And it's purely done to drive clicks and drive engagement and drive interaction on news websites, and indeed sometimes on things like YouTube videos as well. There is, of course, another motive in terms of reputational damage. So trying to damage either a political opponent or a public figure or someone that you maybe have a grudge against by putting things out there in the public domain about them that aren't true. But indeed, it works the opposite way. It's trying to elevate your status in society or enhance your reputation by making claims about yourself that aren't true either. So fake news can work both ways in terms of reputation. It can damage it and it can build it up. It can also very much erode the trust that exists in societies and communities around key issues. So horrible to bring this one up, but if we take the country that I live in, of the United Kingdom, we take the whole thing with Brexit a number of years ago, the amount of disinformation and fake news swirling around that on both sides, if I'm honest, was huge, and it very much manipulated the public opinion on that issue, so that when it came time to actually voting in a referendum, it was hard to know the impact that disinformation may have had on influencing people's individual voting decisions. And that's why it's so important to keep this in mind, not just now in an election year, but moving forward. There is real potential behind both fake news and other forms of disinformation to change the way that people feel about issues in society. Now, that can be done in a positive way, provided it's truthful and accurate information. You can nudge people towards more positive behaviours in society, and the coronavirus pandemic was evidence of that, where countries had to impose lockdowns and restrictions. Actually, lots of information was given out in many countries to citizens about the best things to do to help protect themselves and others, and many people did that, and that did help in lots of cases in terms of managing what was a never before experienced pandemic. But of course, if fake information is pushed in the same way, it can very much do the opposite. It can actually put situations in place where people may be at risk of harm in some way. There's also the fact that there is a market for this. You know, most people now could probably make their own fake news headlines and fake news content if they wanted to, but there is a strong underground market of individuals making this on behalf of others. And because they can make it on behalf of others, they can charge money for it as well. It's a lucrative market. So there are people out there, there are bad actors who will make this type of content and spread it out there for you for a price. While the demand exists for that kind of service, then those kind of people are going to continue to operate. And then, of course, finally, fake news sometimes is parody or satire. So if you ever checked out the website like The Onion, that's a long-standing one that has a lot of satirical or parody type headlines around news events. It's never meant to be taken as serious, but people coming to it cold and out of context and not understanding may believe everything that's seen and written on there. So it's important to understand that sort of a mixed amongst the stuff that's completely fake and the stuff that's completely accurate is the stuff that's just trying to have a bit of a joke or, you know, poke fun at someone. Sometimes at their expense. So there's a number of different motives, and indeed, I feel like every presentation I talk, I do now, either with young people or with professionals like yourselves or with parents and carers, it can't help but have to talk about AI in some form or fashion, regardless of the topic you're talking about. It's kind of ever present now, and it is in this area as well. So the role of AI in terms of disinformation and fake news is a growing problem too. And you can see a few examples on the screen here, starting down the left with Pedro Sanchez, the Prime Minister of Spain, alongside Joe Biden. Completely fake image, but very easy to create with modern generative AI tools, freely available to anyone to use. Immediately, a situation where you can create content about high-profile public figures that is not accurate, that is very much fake news content. And of course, pushing that out on social media and various news channels is a way to spread disinformation very, very quickly. Most people are going to look at that. They aren't going to take into account any clues that might be there to suggest it's AI generated, and they're going to take it as being trustworthy at face value. And that is a huge problem. AI is making it increasingly difficult to tell the difference between real and fake. We've already experienced how difficult it is to make decisions about a headline just on a few words on the screen, deciding if that's real or fake. When it comes to videos, images, and other types of content, AI is becoming incredibly and increasingly sophisticated in terms of what it can produce. Gone are the days where you had really sort of janky looking videos of Will Smith trying to eat spaghetti. Now the AI generation of live video content is almost perfect. It's almost impossible to tell with the human eye that you are looking at AI generated stuff rather than genuine video content. And that brings us nicely to the image in the middle there, that infographic from Ipsos, who ran a survey recently asking lots of citizens about their opinions around artificial intelligence, fake news and disinformation. And you can see the stat there, 74% across 29 countries feel that AI is making it easier for anyone, even without any technical skills, to produce fake news stories and images that can fool other people. So it is a growing consideration as we move forward, and a growing thing for you to consider in terms of media literacy education. We'll come on to in a moment some of the skills and ways of spotting things, be it fake news or disinformation, and the clues you can look for. When it comes to AI, a lot of those tricks and tips fall down because you can't look for clues in the same way as you can do for other types of content. So in the future, I feel we're going to have a lot more AI tools that allow you to check AI content. So if you're not sure if a video or image has been generated by artificial intelligence, I think increasingly in the future, you're going to have to go to a website, paste the link into the image or the video, and then an AI tool itself will try and make a judgment on whether something else has been made by AI. And I think that is very much the future, and indeed already the present in some cases. There are some of those tools available now. And then the last one, the right there, just shows again the potential harm that this can cause to individuals, whether they're high profile or not. But in many cases with fake news, it does tend to focus on high profile people. And you may have heard about the story of Taylor Swift in recent months, where deep nude content, so deep fakes, where produced fake sexual content of Taylor Swift were posted all over social media, particularly places like X, and to the point where X actually had to suspend a number of search terms and a number of things from being posted because so many people were flocking to and finding this fake content. And of course, the impact on Taylor Swift was huge there. The impact on reputational damage is massive for someone if this happens. And this is a problem that we are seeing increasing in many countries, and indeed for many high profile people, but also for your average citizen as well. If someone wants to make a deep fake nude picture or video of you, there are many tools out there to do that now. It's very, very hard to disprove that kind of proof if it looks very genuine. So there are huge issues around AI. There are huge opportunities for AI to create great content as well, but the capacity for disinformation always exists amongst these. And that's where I'm just going to pivot back into disinformation more generally. As I kind of said, fake news is a subset, if you like, of disinformation. And there are other types of disinformation and misinformation that exist. We've already covered this idea of satire or parody. But you can see there are things such as false connection, which is that clickbaity type thing that I said, where headlines don't match the actual content you read. There is this whole idea of misinformation, of misleading content. There is false context, where people apply certain context around a story that completely changes the way that someone might read it and interpret it. There is imposter content, where people pretend to be legitimate news websites like CNN or the BBC or other mainstream big news platforms. They are faked, and things are photoshopped or edited to look like they've come from those trustworthy news sources and then shared on social media to confuse people further. There's, of course, manipulated content, not just with AI, but things that may have been photoshopped, that may have been cropped, that may have been edited in some way. And I've talked mainly about visual stuff, but don't forget audio content. So sound files, faking people's voices, cropping what people say to only capture certain sound bites can all change the way in which content and information may be perceived. And then, of course, at the highest, most extreme end in terms of harm is the completely false, fabricated content, something that doesn't have any grain or kernel of truth in it. And the most effective types of disinformation tend to be the ones that have some details that are accurate, and then sprinkled amongst them are the fake details that help push the particular motive or agenda that someone has in mind. Something that is completely fake sometimes doesn't have the same impact or resonate in the same way. So I just wanted to focus on another type of disinformation that's quite an interesting one, and one that indeed your learners may come across in a number of different ways, particularly if they like watching YouTube or social media. And it is this idea of conspiracy theories. And just like other forms of disinformation, conspiracy theories themselves have a number of different layers in terms of the potential for harm. So there's this wonderful chart called the conspiracy chart made by a Dutch TikToker called Abby Richards. She hasn't updated it since 2021, but to be honest, most of the things that you see on this chart are still in wide circulation as conspiracy theories on social media and YouTube today. So there's a link on the bottom of this slide. You can go in and check it out and see an interactive version of this chart where you can hover over the different stories and learn more. But I just wanted to kind of walk you through it and how it can kind of range in different types of content, but also why this is important in terms of a risk to your learners as well. So we'll start at the bottom of the chart. It's like an inverted pyramid. Starting at the bottom, you have the stuff that actually turned out to be true. Things that conspiracy theories that we've had in society, maybe for a short time or a long time, but were actually proven to be factually correct. So things like the Watergate scandal in the USA in the early 1970s. Things like the fact that big tobacco companies lied about the effects of smoking on cancer for decades. Things such as Britney Spears having no freedom in her life and her finances for a very long period of time in her life. That was proved in a court case a couple of years ago. And then we move up to the blue section, the kind of the stuff that maybe we can never prove. Do aliens and UFOs really exist? Is there an Area 51? Was JFK really assassinated by the person people say he was? Do we live in a simulation like the Matrix? Maybe we'll never come to a concrete, definitive answer on those questions. And then moving up, and back down to the bottom on this screenshot, to the pink stuff, the stuff that's largely harmless to most people, but could cause reputational damage to the people involved. And this is where some of your more weird and wonderful conspiracy theories come from. Things like Avril Lavigne, the singer, has been replaced by a woman named Melissa. The Titanic never sank. Elvis Presley is still alive. Stevie Wonder isn't blind. Greta Thunberg's a time traveler, etc., etc., etc. Those really kind of weird ones that you do tend to see sometimes family members showing around on Facebook from time to time. But it's when we get up to the orange and the red that you start to encounter some real issues around conspiracy theories. These are the ones that if you choose to believe in, can negatively influence your beliefs and behavior that can put you at risk of harm. They are the types of conspiracy theories that if you start trying to convince others of, you can put them in positions of harm. And they are the kind of ones that cause conflict in society when you raise them and you stand by these beliefs, even when they aren't rooted in any kind of reality or fact. So things like the coronavirus vaccines have microchips inside them. The moon landing was faked. Joe Biden is an 80-year-old robot, because clearly you'd make a robot that was 80 years old. Things like global warming is a hoax. The Holocaust never happened. The Earth is flat. There are Nazis on the moon. George Floyd was a crisis actor, and it was all faked, designed to kickstart the Black Lives Matter movement back into the public eye again. All these kind of quite extreme theories. And of course, if you choose to believe in these and you interact with these online, you share these things with others, then you do run the risk of putting yourself in a position where you may come to some harm. You do run the risk of putting others in a position where they may be harmed as well. if nothing else, causing a huge amount of upset to other people if you try and push these agendas onto them. And the reason for sharing this is because, by and large, your learners, regardless of their age, whether they're primary age or secondary, aren't going to be sitting there thinking about all these things just off the top of their head. They're not going to come up with these concepts by themselves. None of your learners are sat there, in your classroom having a little daydream and thinking, I wonder if Joe Biden is an 80-year-old robot. It's not something that's going to naturally come to mind. But what they do often do is they encounter it on social media because they may have a favorite influencer on YouTube or TikTok or elsewhere, and they'll pop up on a video and they go, hi, everyone. Well, in a departure from what we usually do today, I'm not going to do my usual stuff. I'm going to tell you about these weird and wonderful conspiracy theories I found. Here's my top 5. Number 1, let's go. And before you know it, it opens up rabbit holes for children and young people online where suddenly they tumble into these rabbit holes and they start exploring these things more, and it starts to become very confusing, and they're presented with ideas and concepts that they never would have thought of by themselves. And that can be very, very tricky, particularly if they can't discern what's real or fake. There's also the fact that the algorithms on social media pick up on this too. If you start watching flat earth videos on YouTube, be prepared for your entire feed of suggestive videos to be about flat earth. That's how the algorithms work. They try to give you more of the things that you've been watching and engaging with. And if you're engaging with things that are completely fake and are conspiracy theories, then that's going to cause huge issues for you moving forward. You're going to see more of that content. And that's where you run the risk of things such as echo chambers and filter bubbles, where you're only ever hearing the same messages and you're not getting the other side of an argument or an idea. So useful one to keep in mind, and you can explore that chart yourself using the link on the slide and the link that Anna Rita's very kindly put into the chat. So just going to take a moment on how disinformation is spread, because there's a number of different ways in which these messages get out, be they fake news or other types of disinforming content. One way, and one key way, will always be through human behavior online, the interactions between online users. And that could be through trolls who are vindictive and have an agenda and will post fake news and misleading content deliberately to smear someone's reputation or to incite an argument or to stir up a hornet's nest of trouble. If you want evidence of that, just go and have a look on X. You see this thing happening day in, day out. There are, as I just mentioned, echo chambers, the fact that people end up in communities online and groups online across different social media platforms where they only hear the same messages over and over from like-minded people. And if you're only hearing the same messages from people who already agree with you, you never have the opportunity to experience other points of view or other arguments that can help you make a more informed decision around a topic. There's also this idea, and I love this one, but it's just one of the peculiarities of the internet, this idea of circular reporting. So if you went to Wikipedia and you had a really niche bit of knowledge on something and there wasn't already a Wikipedia entry there, and you wrote a Wikipedia entry about that particular thing that you knew about, you will find over time, if it's something of interest to others, that other people pick up that Wikipedia entry and then they mention those details on other websites. And this has happened in journalism as well, where they won't be able to find any information on a topic other than on Wikipedia. They'll go to Wikipedia for the information. They'll report it on a news website or an article or a story. Other people will read those. They'll go, oh, well, that's interesting. I need to double check that. They'll search for that information. They'll find the Wikipedia entry and they'll use that as a source to clarify what's been written in the article. But it's circular reporting. It's the same information being recycled and it all came from a single source, but everyone's routes of checking all lead back to the same source and it spreads further and further outward, but it's still the same source of information just being spread outward. And it makes it really tricky then to recognize when something isn't real unless you know specific information that counters what you've read online. So this circular reporting thing can be really tricky, particularly for quite specific topics where a lot of information doesn't already exist online. And then the last one, of course, as I mentioned earlier, is financial motivation. Fraudsters and scammers and scam websites will constantly push links to fake products, fake services, fake websites to try and get people to sign in, to disclose personal data that can be stolen, to allow access to accounts to be hacked, or indeed, obviously, to gain access to financial information as well. So there's always that risk running alongside the more harmless side of disinformation and misinformation. There's always the cyber criminal aspect as well. And then, of course, the technological aspect. I've already talked about algorithms, the fact that they will feed off your engagement in certain types of content and show you more of that same thing. But there's also this idea of filter bubbles. If you're only using particular sites and services to get your information, if you only ever get your news off Facebook, then you are going to exist in a filter bubble within there, unless you're seeking to go to other social media platforms and see what people are saying about it there, or going to different news websites to double check that information. There are also persuasive design features on social media and games and other platforms that nudge you towards things. Clickbait is one example, as I mentioned earlier, but other things that may get you to engage with or click on certain stories or content or make certain changes to your settings in your profile that may nudge you towards certain types of information or certain experiences, as opposed to you having free choice over this as well. And then finally, as you can see by the picture on the screen there, this whole idea of bot networks. So these can be used for cybercrime again, but also similarly can be used by others as a way of mobilizing fake news and spreading it across social media using fake social media accounts as part of a network, constantly spreading the same fake news and fake information from account to account and account, and they all share it across each other, they all retweet, they all like each other's comments. And before you know it, it spreads further and further and further. So it's a way of gaining traction on a message, even if that message isn't rooted in any kind of fact. So what are the risks around this more generally, be it fake news or other types of disinformation? Well, of course, if it's to do with cybercrime, then there is very much the risk of financial loss or personal data theft, if criminals are seeking to trick people into giving that information or those details away. Of course, at a more grounded level, both at individual and society level, is this whole idea of changes to beliefs and behavior. If a fake news article manages to gain traction online suggesting that you should adopt a certain type of diet or a certain type of fitness regime, and actually that turns out to be harmful to people, then that can cause huge problems. But it might have the potential to sway people's opinions on an issue. There's also the fact that, you know, you can just end up what we call drowning in irrelevant content. There's just so much information coming through to you through social media platforms and other things that you use day in, day out, and children and young people are no different, that it becomes very, very difficult to make decisions about the content you're seeing because you're just flooded by so much stuff that is completely irrelevant or isn't based in truth. How do you pick apart which things are the most important and which things are rooted in accurate information as well? And then, of course, depending on the nature of the information that you're accessing, there are risks to mental health. It could be things that may stoke anxiety and fear in people. And you often see that with clickbaity headlines. They might be there to try and create quite a strong emotion in people when they interact with those. There are risks to physical health and safety, as I mentioned earlier. Things like exercise regimes and diet information. If that isn't good information that's approved by medical professionals, then there could be risks to your physical health by engaging with that advice and following that advice. And of course, then more general risks about safety. We've always got the fact that people don't always tell the truth about themselves online, let alone anything else. So there is the potential for exploitation and grooming and other risks to children when predatory adults and others online are seeking to radicalize them or to push them into extreme behavior in some way. And that's usually for the benefit of that adult or that organized group rather than the benefit of that child or young person. So there can be very real risks to safety as well. So how do you spot these things? Whether it's misinformation, disinformation, fake news, conspiracy theories, or anything else, how do you separate the wheat from the chaff and try and work out what might be more reliable? There is no one definitive route. There is no one definitive strategy. The ones I've got on the screen here are suggestions, and some of those apply in some contexts and some don't. It very much depends. And as we saw with artificial intelligence, sometimes all bets are off. Sometimes there's limited ways you can actually check and use these strategies, but they are still important to understand, and they are definitely important for young people to understand as well. First one is to check the source. Where did it come from? If it's been reposted a number of times on social media, tracing that path back to where it originally came from is really important to understand. Has it come from a trustworthy source, like a big news corporation that you do trust to be accurate and fairly impartial, or has it come from an individual who maybe has a particular agenda or motive? On that individual, what kind of reputation do they have? What kind of other content have they created or posted? Are they trusted in circles and groups, both online and offline? Are they considered to be an expert in their field, or are they just a random person online who suddenly started saying all of these things? One of the most effective ways, of course, is checking other sources, trying to find other places where they have the same information in order to cross-reference. Is this information matching up? Is it accurate, or are there differences there? If one website that you do trust is saying a completely different thing to a social media post that you've seen about the same topic, then you've got to make decisions on which source is giving you the accurate information. You need to look at the language involved as well, if language has been involved in it. So, as I mentioned, things like clickbait will use capital letters on certain words to try and capture your attention. More extreme examples will try and elicit certain strong emotions. It could be fear, it could be anger, it could be upset. So thinking about the language that's been used and the type of emotion it's trying to convey, what it's trying to get you to think and feel as a result is really important too. As is looking at the interaction around the content itself. So looking at comments, looking at likes, looking at shares. What are other people saying about it? How far is this spreading? How many people have been actually looking at this and making judgments on it? Where is it going once it leaves that social media platform? Is it going on to other places? And an important thing to always remind young people of is just because, something on TikTok has had millions of likes and millions of views doesn't necessarily make it trustworthy or reliable. It just makes it really, really popular. So lots of likes does not equal reliable or trustworthy. It just equals popularity. So there's a distinction to be made there as well. You also, and important to encourage young people as well, you also need to consider your own biases. We all have our own unconscious biases. We all have different stereotypes that we have in our mind about particular types of people. It's really important to sometimes challenge those and think about those when you're looking at information online. Is it just reinforcing the biases that you already have, or is something else going on? And sometimes it's about really forcing yourself outside of your comfort zone to go and look for different information that may be an opposing view to what you inherently believe in order to try and gather more information to help you make a better informed decision. And then, as I mentioned, harder with AI, but with other types of visual content like photos and videos and images, looking for visual clues when things do look like they've been distorted or photoshopped or green screened or cropped in some way. So looking out for those and doing things like a reverse image search on Google to see where an image might have come from in the first place are all good strategies to help uncover what might be actually going on. And here's some tips from our Facts for All MOOC that we ran in 2022, and I'll give you a link to the MOOC in a moment on the next slide, but some tips that we shared throughout the course of that MOOC about teaching about information disorder. The fact is that we need to be talking about disinformation now. It's not the kind of thing to say, oh, well, I'll wait a couple of months, I'll do it soon. Find opportunities to try and do it with your learners now. Frequent and often is often the best way. It doesn't have to be a massive lesson all the time. It could just be a quick conversation about an interesting headline that's popped up online or something that they've seen on social media or on YouTube. So making it a part of everyday life and everyday life discussions is key. Talking about emotions is really important. As I mentioned, these things are often designed to elicit strong emotions. So talking about why that is and the strategies behind that and the motivations behind that is important. Thinking about the type of questions that you can get young people to ask of the stuff they see online. So almost like a little checklist of things to say, right, well, who's the author? Who's the source? Do I trust them? What's their reputation like? What's it asking me to do? How is it making me feel? Those kind of questions are a good sort of core skill set to constantly refer to. The fact that you need to recognize that other people have different views on these things, as I mentioned, around biases. And also the fact that you need to sometimes correct mistakes. If your learners are actually coming out with things they've heard online that are, proven to be inaccurate or untrue, it is important to correct those misconceptions. You have to take some care around that, depending on the topic, but it is important to address those rather than let those go unchecked. And then on the right, just a few other things. Starting early with younger children is really important. You can make it fun, you can make it interactive. There are loads of great games out there, and lots of links to those games are included in the deep dive that we have on the BIK Teacher Corner around mis and disinformation. But there are good games that they can explore. There are generators to allow you to try to make your own fake news headline to kind of understand how these things are put together and why they work the way they do. And a really important strategy is this idea of pre-bunking, teaching about the strategies that people use to trick others online, rather than just constantly focusing on the thing that they've actually put up there to trick people. What's the strategy behind it? How have they used language? How have they used imagery and video? How have they shared it in a way that gets people to believe it? Looking at those strategies can be a really effective way of giving children skills and tools to then spot things in the future for any type of content. So sometimes pre-bunking, this whole idea of teaching those strategies and skills beforehand, is a really effective way to go. So here is a link on the slide, and you can find it on the European Schoolnet Academy course catalogue as well. It ran throughout the course of 2022, but you can still access all the MOOC material, and it is an opportunity for you to explore a whole school approach to tackling disinformation issues, particularly disinformation issues that may exist in your school community that can be divisive. So at the time of creating this, we were coming out of, fully out of the pandemic. So there were issues there around, the effect of the coronavirus pandemic, but also issues that may have divided a community around having vaccines. There may be issues in communities today at the moment around, sort of certain election topics. This gives you an opportunity to build a whole school strategy about how to build bridges across those issues and that divide, so you bring your school community together rather than divide them on contentious issues, and how you as a school can play a role in that. And then last thing before we finish, really important, is that, and you'll find a link to this in the teacher corner as well, is our BIK Teacher Voice panel. So we are really interested in having teachers from across the European Union involved in feeding into our work, in being able to talk about the experiences of children that they work with, but other children in Europe in terms of their digital experiences and their safety online, and particularly around a rights-based approach to all of this as well. So if you'd like to be involved in that and have a voice in this, then you need to be teaching in an EU country. You could be teaching at preschool, primary or secondary education up to the age of 18. You need to have a working awareness of online safety and media literacy issues, and be able to express your ideas in English as well. But if you are interested, then the link to the panel is in the chat and also on this slide too. And we'd love to hear from you and have you involved. And then final thing for me before we finish is just to let you know about our next webinar that we have coming up, which is next month on Thursday, the 6th of June, starting at 5 p.m. CEST, so it's Central European Summertime, and that one's going to be around virtual worlds and immersive realities. So we're thinking about VR and AR, but also other types of environments that children and young people engage with online that are considered to be virtual or immersive as well. So we do hope you can join us for that, and details will be shared in due course. But that brings us to the end. Thank you so much for joining me today to walk through this very important topic of disinformation and fake news. Thank you to those of you who took part in the quiz as well. I hope you found it fun. There's my contact details on the screen, and Anna-Rita has popped our contact details into the chat as well. If you do have any questions, please do feel free to reach out, and we are more than happy to help. Once again, thank you so much for joining, and I wish you a very pleasant evening. Thank you so much.
We just joined the chat in the comments in thanking you, Gareth, for a fantastic webinar. I think it was incredibly useful. We work on these issues pretty much every day, but there's always something new to learn, something new coming up. Think of words like deep news and deep fakes that were not even in our vocabulary even just a few months ago, and look at us now. We should ask Colin Dictionary if they're being considered for Word of the Year anytime soon. So thank you very much, Gareth. I would also like to thank our participants, our educator, who found the time to join us today, despite being the day after International Labour Day and with the weekend approaching. So many thanks really for taking the time to find us today. If you have any questions, you can contact us at the email addresses, and we hope to be seeing you very soon, in about a month, in our next webinar. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.